Hi there, Elise Dewsberry here from New Musicals Inc. with another one of my video blog episodes. I'm going to start a currently four-part series today, talking about the many different ways of talking about storytelling that are out there in the world right now. There are sets of rules, there are certain kinds of explanations, there are kind of theories, there are gimmicks, we have with acronyms and everything, talking about all the different elements of how to put together a good story. And I want to say that I think they all have something really valuable to offer, so they're all worth looking at on one level or another. Um, and I think that it's up to each individual person to decide what parts of one work for them, what parts don't, or whether they want to accept one completely. um, I liken it to when I was studying. I took drama musical theater at the Boston Conservatory. That's where I went to college. And my freshman year, as a drama musical theater major, we had two different acting teachers. One of them taught us a very sort of a technical British approach to acting, what sometimes people refer to as an outside in, the kind of approach where you might find a character trait, a limp, or some piece of costuming or something that would sort of help you from the outside to find your way inside to the depth and the inner parts of a character. That's a sort of a technical approach. Our other teacher was completely the opposite. He was much more about method acting. He was much more of what you might consider inside out, which was all about, getting inside of yourself and finding the character from the inside and letting it find its way out. There are very, very different approaches to acting, and there are actors out there in the world who use one or the other, and some who use combinations of the two. What I really appreciated about Boston Conservatory was that they gave us both of those in our freshman year. We were juxtaposed with those two very different kinds of styles, and I think what that taught me from a very early stage is that there isn't only one way to approach it, and what you do is try to experience it, figure out what seems to be working for you, what seems to be fitting for you, and use that. And what doesn't work for you and doesn't fit for you, you can get rid of it. And that doesn't mean that you choose one method over the other. It means you choose the parts of each one that are working best for you. I would say that that I take a similar approach, or I offer a similar approach for people who are taking my core curriculum at New Musicals Inc. It's an opportunity for the 9 months of our core curriculum to learn an approach that I espouse about how to approach storytelling when it comes to musicals, and a methodology for a team approaching putting together the first draft of a musical. There will be aspects of that methodology that work for people and aspects that don't. And as I recommend to people taking the class, experience it during the length of the class, see how it works for you. And when it's over, keep what worked for you, throw out what didn't. I certainly hope that you wouldn't have to throw it all out, but that's the approach. So that being said, I'm going to start this four-part series. And of course, by the end of the series, if there are particular theories or explanations or ideas about storytelling that you particularly like that I've missed over the course of these four sessions, absolutely, let me know, and I'll probably add more parts to this series. So for the first part of the series, I'm going to start with four different theories, different approaches that are relatively short, so I can fit them all into one episode of this blog. The first one, of course, I have to start with the standard one from my mentor, John Sparks, who ran this workshop for many, many years and studied under the infamous Lehman Engel. And for John, about a musical, it boils down to the simplicity of musicals are about someone who wants something, what they do to get it, and whether they get it or not. Simple as that. And I'm always amazed at how easy it is to keep going back to that when you're having questions about where you're going with the story. Just keep going back to those basics. Are you concentrating on who your story is about, what they want, what are they doing to try and get it, and do they get it or not? Obviously, there's a lot more to telling a story than that, but if you keep going back to those basics, you can hardly go wrong, because you'll never lose sight of the journey of the character that you're trying to the journey you're trying to illuminate with your show. So short and sweet. Another short and sweet one that I found is from George M. Cohan, who was a vaudeville entertainer, a playwright, a composer, a lyricist, an actor, a singer, a dancer, a producer. He did it all back at the turn of the last century. And he famously said, apparently, in the first act, you get your main character up in a tree. In the second act, you throw stones at them. In the third act, you get them down, which again is extremely simple, but so brilliant. It's like, you put your character in a difficult situation, and that relates back to, what do they want? Well, they want out of that situation somehow, but you put them in a difficult situation, you make it even worse, right? You up the stakes, you keep throwing more at them. And then at the end of the show, you get them down, whether that's happily or unhappily, it depends on the style of the show. So simple, but so valuable to break it down to that level of simplicity. Now, another one that has been shared with me several times during our pitch conference, we've got another one of those pitch conferences coming up in April, if you don't know about it yet. It's a virtual pitch conference, and you can sign up at nmi.org to be part of it and to pitch your show to industry professionals. One of the industry professionals who often takes part in our virtual pitch conference is the Broadway producer Cody Lassen, who's a wonderful and very generous person, and generous with his expertise and his knowledge and his time, which is very much appreciated. And one of the things that he's brought to the table during our pitch conference, he's told us to look at at Pixar's 22 rules. So this is the animation company Pixar, and these are presumably the 22 rules that they apply to storytelling to see whether or not the idea for a movie is going to be a good thing to start down the road with, and where is it in its development, and what are we missing, to keep asking those questions as you go along. So I'm going to read you Pixar's 22 rules. Number 1, you admire a character for trying more than, there you go, sorry. You admire a character for trying more than for their success. Okay, so these aren't all rules, they're just their thoughts and things to apply. You admire a character for trying more than for their success. You got to keep in mind what's interesting to you as an audience, not what's fun to do as a writer. They can be very different. So think about your audience as opposed to yourself, right? Trying for theme is important, but you won't see what the story is actually about till you're at the end of it. Now rewrite. I love that, because I do often say that I do want you to develop a theme. My methodology wants you to start with theme, but it is true that sometimes until you've actually written your first draft or your first rough draft and know where you're going, you don't always necessarily understand where it is you want to get to. And once you do, then you can go back and rewrite and apply everything to get there. Number 4, this was Cody's favorite, I think, and maybe the most important one of all of these to take away, which is you take this one sentence, it's like a Mad Lib, right? And you fill in the blanks for your story. And that is a way to pitch it. That's a way to approach pitching. And it's a way to think about how to boil your story down to its essence. So here's what you do. Once upon a time, there was blank. Every day, blank. Because of that, blank. Because of that, blank. Until finally, blank. Yeah, it seems very similar. Is that very simple? But the idea is to establish, how did the story start? What was usually happening? And then one day something else happened. And then because of that, something else and something else, until finally this happened. These all seem very simple, but if you think about your own story with these things in mind, it's amazing what will happen. Number 5. Simplify, focus. This is many things in one. Simplify, focus, combine characters, hop over detours. You'll feel like you're losing valuable stuff, but it sets you free. Right? So that's really interesting. I often tell people simplify, simplify, simplify. And I often will say, you don't need both of these characters, combine them, or you don't need that scene, or, you don't need that C storyline or whatever. So Pixar is saying you might feel like you're losing valuable stuff, but it actually sets you free. Number 6, what is your character good at and comfortable with? Throw the polar opposite at them. Challenge them. How do they deal? Great thing to do to really set a story going. Number 7, come up with your ending before you figure out your middle. Seriously, endings are hard. Get yours working up front. I totally agree. Figure out where you want to get to. And that really does apply to theme, because if you're trying to tell a story that has a certain idea, then you know how it needs to end. You know, basically it needs to end in order to illuminate your theme. It needs to end like this. So what can we do to set our character on a path towards that, or, and put obstacles in their way, and what's going to happen that's going to, so that you don't just present the theme. You have to make it hard to get there. Number 8, finish your story. Let go, even if it's not perfect. In an ideal world, you have both, but move on. Do better next time. Not bad advice. Some people start working on one musical and spend the rest of their life working on it, trying to get it produced, etc., etc. And I don't say you have to abandon it, but keep going, keep writing, keep moving. You can always go back to something. Another opportunity may come up. A new opportunity may provide an opportunity for something in the past. So just keep going. Number 9, when you're stuck, make a list of what wouldn't happen next. Lots of times the material to get you unstuck will show up. Interesting idea. Number 10, pull apart the stories you like. What you like in them is part of you. You'll never share it with anyone. Not sure what they mean by you'll never share it with anyone, but I think they mean that you don't need to tell anyone what inspired your story. You can look at something you really, really like. What is it you like about it, and see if you can emulate that in your own story without having to, say, I got this idea from someone else. Number 11, putting it on paper lets you start fixing it. If it stays in your head, a perfect idea, you'll never share it with anyone. Just today, I had somebody email me and say, I want to work with you on a new idea, but it's just the beginnings of an idea now. So should I wait until I have the outline fleshed out and send it to you later? Haven't answered that person yet, but I'm going to today. I'm going to say, the earlier I can get it, the happier it makes me. Because I feel like that's the major part of my job as a dramaturg, is to help you at that very early stage with all the what ifs and the what could it be and what does this suggest and all of those ideas, so that before you invest a lot of time in an outline and then even more time in a rough draft and then a final draft, and then have people come and tell you all the things you missed along the way, or how you could better focus the story or whatever. Why waste all that time? Get people involved much earlier. People you trust, of course, your collaborators, a dramaturg, people you really trust. But don't keep that perfect idea in your mind and not want to share it with anybody. Especially don't not want to share it with people because you're afraid they'll steal it. Your idea is your idea, and how you tell the story is how you tell the story. Nobody can actually steal that, even if they steal some of the basics or borrow some of the basics or some of the mechanics or whatever. It's still always going to be, you're the only person who can tell it the way you would tell it, and no one can ever take that away from you. Let's see, number 12, discount the first thing that comes to mind, and the second, third, fourth, fifth. Get the obvious out of the way and surprise yourself. So true. Just keep pushing, digging. Don't stick with what comes first. One of the reasons why I always feel like it's very useful to have collaborators. I know there are some solo writers out there who are good at all three crafts and love doing it on their own. But I think sometimes then you don't push yourself to find that best idea. And having somebody else go, yeah, that's fine, but what else? Or how about this? Or my colleague, Scott Guy, who's one of the best people I have ever known in being in a story generating idea, or a song spotting session, he always is pushing, saying, what if, what else, what else, what else, what else? And you never stop doing that, because it doesn't mean you haven't already come up with good ideas, and you might still use one of the earlier ones, but you keep pushing yourself to dig deeper, think harder. Number 13, give your characters opinions. Passive malleable might seem likable to you as you write, but it's poison to the audience. This is very true. Sometimes people are afraid to write characters that they're afraid the audience won't like. But the fact is, if your character is perfect and wonderful, then the only kind of conflict you can do is completely outside of them. And that can work. It can be the weather, it can be, a villain, it can be whatever. But having a flawed character makes their journey more interesting. It means that there's something they need to learn along the way. They don't have to be terrible and awful and irredeemable, but if they're flawed, they have something to learn on their journey. And that's very interesting to us as an audience. Number 14, why must you tell this story? What is the belief burning within you that your story feeds off of? That's the heart of it. So true. If you're writing a musical, it's going to be with you for a long time. It better be very deeply important to you to tell this story. And I would say too, at our pitch conference, we've heard industry professionals over and over again say, "I'm less interested in the story you want to tell, and more interested in why you want to tell it or why you must tell it." That's exciting to people. The people who want to get to work with you in development, because they're going to be spending a long time with you too, and they want to know you're passionate about it and have something very important to say. Otherwise, they're not going to want to spend 5 or 10 years helping you develop the piece. Number 15, if you were your character in this situation, how would you feel? Honesty lends credibility to unbelievable situations. Yeah, so put yourself in the shoes of your character. Number 16, what are the stakes? Give us reason to root for the character. What happens if they don't succeed? Stack the odds against. Conflict, conflict, conflict. There is no storytelling without conflict. And raising the stakes. One way to look at it, people are always saying you make the stakes higher, make the stakes higher. So a great way to look at it is to say, what happens if they don't succeed? So in other words, if they don't get their goal, how is that going to negatively impact them? That's equally important to what stops them from getting their goal, because we won't care if there's anything stopping them from getting their goal if we don't understand how important the stakes are for why they need to achieve it. Number 17, no work is ever wasted. If it's not working, let go and move on. It'll come back around to be useful later. That's just pushing you towards understanding that rewriting, just keep writing, just keep writing, just keep writing. It's not a waste. Number 18, you have to know yourself. The difference between doing your best and fussing. Story is testing, not refining. That's interesting. I mean, I do think there's a lot of refining involved, but I think I know what they mean. They're saying, keep pushing to do your best. Don't just fuss with things that are little and picky. This might be too more about when you're willing to share it. If you feel it has to be absolutely perfect before you can share it, it's never going to be perfect. And the best way to get it closer to perfect is to share it with smart people who can help you make it better. Number 19, coincidences to get characters into trouble are great. Coincidences to get them out of trouble are cheating. Oh, I love that. I love that, because what they're saying is you can have some kind of a funky coincidence that winds, two people up in the same place in the same boat. But if some kind of coincidence happens to help them get out of it, that seems contrived. That seems writerly. It seems like, the Deus ex machina, the machine that comes down from the sky and saves the day at the end of the story. You need something more inventive and less easy to see through to solve things at the end of the day. Number 20, exercise. Take the building blocks of a movie you dislike. How do you rearrange them into what you do like? Oh, so they're giving you an exercise to do. Go to a movie that you don't like and see what could you change about it that would make you like it. An interesting exercise. Number 21, you got to identify with your situation and characters. Can't just write cool. What makes you act that way? It's getting very conversational there, 22 things, but I think what they're saying is, you need some believability and some identifiability. You can't just go, hey, what would a cool character do in this situation? What would a character that other people want to see? Not that you can't involve that, but if there isn't some authenticity to it, that's going to show. Number 22, what's the essence of your story? Most economical telling of it. If you know that, you can build out from there. Obviously, theme, essence, what are you trying to say? What does your character learn? All of that stuff. So that's a bit jumbled, those, and they're not really rules, but they're all really interesting things to think about. Cool. So now the last thing that I'm going to leave you with today is something that I heard, and I think he's been saying this for years, but I only remember hearing it at the most recent ASCAP workshop that Stephen Schwartz holds. He holds one in New York and one in LA, and he just did the one in LA. Oh, it's been almost a year now, I think, but he has something that he titles it, "What Makes This Musical Different from All Other Musicals?" Which of course is a reference to the Jewish celebration of Passover, when Jews get together to have their Passover Seder, and they say, what makes this night different from all nights? And there are, it's always a little difficult. There are 4 questions that the youngest person at the table is supposed to ask. It seems like they should be answering that question, but what they're doing is asking you 4 questions that all relate back to that question. Why do we recline on pillows? Why do we eat this? Why do we not eat that? They're the 4 questions that all relate to what makes this night different from all nights. So Stephen Schwartz has come up with a version of what makes this musical different from all other musicals. And the 4 questions, according to Stephen Schwartz, are: what is this about? What does the lead want? Why should I care? And when do I get to go home? That's a fun way to put it. Obviously, that goes right back to what John always said. Musicals are about people who want things. So those are the first two questions. What is it about? What does the lead want? Those are very related. What they do to get it is not so much in here. And whether what this one focuses on instead is why should I care, which is a really, really important question to ask. Why should your audience care what your lead wants? And all the obstacles that goes back to the question about what will happen if they don't get what they want, et cetera, and can I relate to this character, and all of those things, that because no matter how excited you are about the story, why should I care about it? It's a really important thing. And then when do I get to go home? Sounds sillier than it's meant to be. What it means is how does this lead to an inevitable ending? How is it all going to wrap up? How is it going to be satisfying and make me feel like I can go, okay, I understand this story. I'm ready to go home now. It doesn't matter whether it's a comedy or a tragedy or something in between. There has to be some sense that, yes, we have come to the end of this story, and I can go home now. So those are the first things that I'm talking about in my series, and I'm going to, in the next 3 vlogs, I'm going to talk about many other or a handful of other theories and ideas that are out there about how to approach storytelling. And as I said, if you've got favorites, send them to me and I'll see if I can include them in the list. But this is what we're starting with today. So thanks for being with me for this, and toodaloo.